Lawn Boy, Chapter 7, 8, and 9 by Gary Paulsen. Read for you by Mrs. Shoemaker. Chapter 7. Overutilization of labor compounded by unpredicted capital growth. It was raining. It was the first day all summer it had rained hard enough to stop work. It was now July, and I had ridden my 10-speed, yes, my old one, though I had bought a new inner tube, over to Arnold's house. Arnold had made the hippie tea that was sweet without sugar, and I sipped it while we dragged out the notebooks. I had left all the paperwork at his house because it would have been too hard to explain to my parents. There were now 5 3-ring binders, and in fact, I knew almost nothing about it myself. It had all been a kind of blur. "It's all just too groovy," Arnold said, putting his tea down. "Free market industry and capitalism at their best. It's like watching a really good documentary about business. Far out." "I don't know what we're doing," I said. "Not a clue, except that we're cutting a lot of grass, and I'm not getting much sleep. And this morning my mother said she was forgetting what I look like. It's lucky we got a rain day." We were in Arnold's screened-in porch, and he had spread the notebooks out on a large round picnic table. "It gives us a little time for you to catch up and see the beauty of what we are doing." The rain was hammering down, almost deafening, and I found myself liking it. I used to hate the rain in the summer because it ruined vacation time. Now I thought rain was beautiful. "We'd better start with an overall view of the lawn cutting phase of your operation." "Oh yes," I thought. "Let's start with that." Like I knew anything. Like I would have an operation with phases. "Currently, you have 15 employees." I stared at him. "That can't be right." He nodded, smiling. "Surprising, isn't it? Technically, I guess Pascal is more of a partner. And really, they are all partners in a way. They share the same income from their work with you, the company head." 15? He nodded again. "Now, the truth is they earn their living because you found them work, and that brings up a second consideration of this phase of your operation." 15 people work for me? I wished he would quit talking about my operation and its phases. It was starting to sound like General Motors or something. "Yes, and that should lead you to consider your responsibility as a business head. You owe your employees that consideration." "Well, sure. If there's 15 people working for me, I should consider them. But I don't know what you mean specifically." "Well, think of this. They're seasonal workers. When the cutting is done, they're no longer employed by you. A responsible employer should set aside some of his income, a percentage, to give them a bonus when the season ends to ease their transition into other forms of employment." "I should? I mean, yes, I guess I should. How does that work?" "Well, first let's look at your personal growth income from lawn cutting, shall we? It's really the only figure that counts for this aspect of your operation." "Oh, of course. Aspect," I thought. First phases. Now aspects of my operation. I'm 12 years old, and I have aspects. Well, for reasons we'll cover later, taxes are going to take a hefty bite, and you'll have some small expenses, gas for your mower, oil, that sort of thing. I kept track of those items in this expense notebook. Then there's my fee. I'm taking 5% across the board for this and the market work, just to simplify things, rather than working on a sliding scale. All right? Oh my, yes, I thought. Let's keep it simple. I felt like I was drowning in aspects and phases. Good? I mean, I guess it is good? Sure, good. So before taxes, my percentage and expenses, you grossed out at just over 8. 8 what? $8,000. $8,000? Yes. Of course, like I said, that's gross and your net won't be anywhere near that. I think you should perhaps set aside a pretty good chunk for employee relief, perhaps 20%. At this stage, naturally, that will go up as they earn more. They'll appreciate it when the season ends. I had this sudden memory of when I was 9 years old. Back then, I thought that someday I might be a professional basketball player. This in spite of the fact that I'm fairly short and can't make a basket to save my soul. But I thought when I was 9 that if I just had the right ball, a true professional ball made by Spalding, I could be good enough to be a professional player when I grew up. The problem was that the ball was expensive. There was no way my parents could spend that kind of money on one measly basketball, and I couldn't find a way to get enough money on my own. So I wound up with a cheap ball, and, I thought, no chance at a professional basketball career. How many balls could I buy with $8,000? $8,000! I was only 3 years older now than I had been then. True, it was a big 3 years. But after just 3 years, I could afford all the Spalding basketballs I wanted. I was rich. Rich! What a strange word that was. It didn't really mean anything in itself. Rich. Short for Richard? Why does rich mean having tons of money? How many Spalding balls could I buy, really, with $8,000? Say they're $20 each to make it simple. 5 balls for $100, 50 for $1,000, 400? I could buy 400 Spalding basketballs. What do you mean? I suddenly remembered something Arnold had said. You said something about this being a small amount of money? Is that what you said? I don't know what you're used to having, but I can't think of $8,000 as a small amount. Everything, Arnold said, is relative. Taken in the whole scheme of things, $8,000, though significant, is not all that large. If Bill Gates, who owns Microsoft, for instance, could hold all his wealth in his hands, and he suddenly dropped it just on the way to the ground, it would make over $40,000 in interest. Huh? I tried to picture that. Look, I understand that I don't have as much as Bill Gates. Still, I am very satisfied with what I have. I honestly don't know what I would do with more money than that. Seriously? Absolutely. It's more money than I could even think of having. It wasn't that long ago that I was wondering where to get enough money to buy an inner tube for my 10-speed. Now I could buy a whole new bike. I could buy a bunch of them. Well then, Arnold shrugged and sighed, we have a bit of a problem. Chapter 8. Dramatic Economic Expansion. Its Causes and Effects. Your problem, Arnold said, is both simple and a bit complex. More tea? No, I'm fine. Outside, the rain seemed to let up a bit, then came down harder. I could hear thunder way off somewhere. What are you talking about? He took a sip of tea. Man, I like this tea. It comes straight from India, you know. All the yogis drink it. I hear the Beatles used to drink it all the time. Arnold. Oh, well, let's get back to when all this started, all right? You bet. Please. You remember that I had a cash flow problem then, and instead of paying you cash, I started an account for you under my own name because you're too young to have an account. Yes. And we bought 80 shares of a coffin manufacturing firm for 50 cents a share. I nodded. I'm still with you. There's some risk, of course, with buying what they call penny stocks, which these were. But I thought just $40 invested, even if the company went belly up, the loss rate would not be unbearable. I'm still here. Well, the stock did not lose. After the second quarter of the year, it turned out the company had a great deal of land in northern Minnesota, upwards of 2,000 acres of hardwoods, that they had planned to use to make the coffins. Another sip of tea. I waited. This had not been reported initially, but the land with the valuable hardwoods is free and clear and belongs to the company. It was part of their net worth that nobody knew about, and when word got out, the stock rose dramatically. How dramatically? Normally, I dislike these things because they give the wrong impression about the stock market. 10-12% a year is a good figure to think about making in the market. These explosions are very unpredictable, and there's always an element of risk, and one shouldn't plan on it. How big an explosion? The first day, it jumped to just over $10, and I thought of selling. Stock purchased at 50 cents and sold for $10 gives an excellent return. But the sudden surge caused a lot of interest, and people started wanting to buy the stock, and that drove the price up further and still further, and I finally sold at $100.10 a share. So your $40 investment brought you just over $8,000, less my 5% commission. You mean I have $8,000 on top of the other 8,000? I dumped them together in my head. 8 and 8 is 16. $16,000. Less commissions and those other things, taxes, less taxes. $16,000. Well, not exactly. I assumed I had a rather free hand with your investment, so I reinvested it. And some of the other money you've been giving me, and frankly, I took a daring risk with one stock. I invested my own money at the same time and took the same risk. What did you invest it in? It was one of those freak software things. Believe me, normally I wouldn't have given it a second thought. They're just too big a gamble. But the quarterly earnings looked good. They had a new idea about nationwide internet use, something to do with vastly improving the speed. A company called Walleye. I bought you 3,000 shares at 60 cents a share. And we lost? Oh my, no. The new internet system they evolved swept the country, and the stock jumped to $10 and split, which gave you 6,000 shares at 5. Then went back up to $10 and split again, which gave you 12,000 shares, which climbed back up to 55 a share, or $5.50 a share, hung there and flattened out. So I sold when it went back down to $4. He had, as they say, gone past my knowledge envelope about the stock market. So you sold my 3,000 shares for $4? No, he shook his head. It had split and then resplit. You had 12,000 shares at $4 a share. I must point out that this kind of growth is unprecedented. The numbers were there. I knew they were, but they didn't register. It was just too much to understand, to believe. I was 12. That morning, my parents were having trouble deciding if they could afford a newer used car. 5 weeks earlier, my grandmother had given me her old riding lawnmower, and I'd started mowing lawns. I was only 12, and Arnold had sold 12,000 shares of walleye for $4 a share. $48,000. Is that right? Well, less commission, of course. Of course, sure. Right. Let me get this straight. Sure, I know it's all kind of far out. No. Wait. You're telling me that I started with an old lawnmower and I now have... What do I have? Well, from all of your stocks and bonds right now, over $50,000. It's less because I took out my commission, but I will, of course, reinvest it. Oh, of course. All in solid, safe, blue-chip stocks and government bonds. He smiled. Perhaps you'd better take a few deep breaths. You seem to be, weaving a bit. I have $50,000. And change, plus the $8,000 from mowing. And change. You, he said, smiling, have had a very groovy month. But I didn't hear him finish the sentence. I had fainted. Chapter 9. Conflict Resolution and its Effect on Economic Policy. When I came to, there was a damp paper towel over my face. I'm sorry, Arnold said. I thought I eased into it, but I guess the shock. I thought of a really important question. I was still woozy. I'm not sure I heard you right. Did you say I now have over $50,000? Are you going to faint again? No, I don't think so. Then yes, you are now worth that. Where is it? In your account. Under my name, but in your special account. Can I see it? Of course, I have your account information on the computer. He turned to his keyboard and tapped a few keys. No, the money. Can I see the money? He shook his head. It's not like that. First, you'd have to sell all your investments and get a check, and then you'd have to take the check to the bank and cash it, and then, yes, you could see the money. And when you sell, you then owe taxes on your capital gains. At the end of the year, capital gains is what they call the profit you made from your initial investment. Oh, I didn't quite follow all that. I thought. So, I don't really have the money, I said slowly. I have a computer screen and numbers and stocks and things, but not the actual money. That's right. That's how it works. You, or I, acting for you, will reinvest the money in safe stocks, which will give you what's called a diversified portfolio. So if one thing goes down, another might go up to cover you. But it's all there, and you can cash it in anytime you want, except what? I smelled a rat. Right now, the money appears to be mine because legally you can't invest in the market because you're too young. You have to go through an adult. And I'm a little uncomfortable with this because, first of all, I'm not your legal guardian. And second, since the money appears to be mine, the government will want me to pay taxes on it, and that shouldn't be my responsibility, to pay taxes on your money. So what do we do? Soon, very soon, we talk to your parents and get them involved. Mom, I thought. Dad, I have something to tell you. I've been mowing lawns. I've been mowing a lot of lawns, and I have 50,000... Please pass the green beans. And by the way, I have 50,000... Breakfast. Over toast. Mom, Dad, you know how I've been mowing lawns every day? Well, guess what? We have something like 50,000 and change. There's something else. What on earth could it be? How could anything in the world top this? What is it? As I said, I put your money into this walleye stock, but I should remind you that not all your money. I thought it might be good to do some investing for fun. It isn't fun, I thought. Isn't it fun, I thought, to have over $50,000? So there was this kind of fund for people interested in sports, and I thought you might like to invest in that. He trailed off, and I studied him. Is something wrong? He shook his head, looked out at the rain. I couldn't believe it was still raining, that it was the same day, that we had only been talking for an hour or so. Part of me was listening, and part of me was imagining what the money would do to help me, help my parents, what it would buy. I misread the explanation on the fund, he said and sighed. Usually in this kind of fund, a lot of investors pool their money and perhaps buy a baseball team or help to build a stadium, but it didn't turn out that way. How exactly did it turn out? It turns out that you own 100% interest in a heavyweight boxer who lives nearby. I own him? Well, not really the person, of course. You're sponsoring him. And if he does well, you split the purse. He has a purse? What kind of prize fighter carries a purse? That's a figure of speech. The purse is the prize money, his winnings. What's his name? Joseph, Arnold said. Joseph Powdermilk Jr. I have the specs in the computer. I can run you a printout if you like. Sure, I'd like to know more about him. Good, because he's due here in about 15 minutes. He called last night and wants to meet his sponsor and thank him. Arnold shook his head. Look, I'm really sorry about this. If you lose, I'll cover it, all right? And as for meeting him, well, he asked about his sponsor, and without thinking, I gave this address. So if you want, you can leave right now and miss it. I shook my head. No. And if we lose on this, it's not your fault. 5-6 weeks ago, I was sitting in my yard wondering about an inner tube. Now I'm a thousandaire or something. You think I'm going to complain? Some would, he sighed. Some have. What if we'd lost? Then we would have lost $40. That's what we started with, right? We lose the whole walleye thing, and all we've really lost is that, the original $40. Well, that's a healthy way to look at it. There was a sudden clatter in front of the house, and an old station wagon rumbled to a stop. It sat, almost wheezing. Then the driver's side door opened with a great deal of difficulty. A man got out. I say man, but this person looked more like a living mountain than a man. I see it, Arnold said. But I don't believe it. How did he get in the car? He was wearing a big sweatshirt and sweatpants, and as he moved up the sidewalk to the door, his step was amazingly light for someone his size, almost like a really big cat. Even though he could see us through the screen of the porch, he knocked on the screen door. Please, Arnold said, come in. A quick motion, a side slip, and he was in the door and standing in front of Arnold. I'm Joseph Powdermilk, and I would like to thank you for being my sponsor. He faced Arnold and held out his hand. I had never heard such a voice. It sounded like thunder a long way off, muted but deep, rumbling. Sorry, Arnold said. Wrong sponsor. He pointed to me. This is him. He turned, a mountain turning. I am Joseph Powdermilk, and I would like to thank you for being my sponsor. He held out a hand as big as a whole ham. I put my hand out. It disappeared completely in his. and we shook. His touch was gentle. "It's nice to meet you," I said. "My name is—" Just then, Pasquale's truck squeaked up behind Joseph Powdermilk's station wagon and came to a screeching halt. Pasquale came running up to the porch. I knew it must be serious because it was daylight. Pasquale never came out in the daylight. "Come right away." I got up. "What's the matter?" "His name is Rock. He has 2 guys with him. He says we've got to pay him or he'll harm our workers. He plans to take over the business." "What can I do?" "Come, if Rock doesn't meet the boss, he'll cause a lot of trouble. Come now." I hadn't taken a step before I saw Joseph Powdermilk move with me. "I'll help," he rumbled. "I'm good at this." I was out the door. "Good at what?" "Trouble."